Go. All right. Hey, everybody, Economic Ninja here. I hope you're doing great. We need to talk about something that is very serious, and that is the BRICS Alliance. The BRICS Alliance is a group of countries that came together in, 2017, I want to say, and it comprises of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. But the problem is there's a lot more going on. There are countries as close to as Mexico that are applying to BRICS. France wants to leave the European Union. They don't want to come right out and say it, but they do. I brought on a professional, to say he's blown up when he started diving into BRICS is an understatement. That is Andy Schectman of Miles Franklin. Andy, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, my man. I love being here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for coming on. Andy and I are friends, just so you guys know. We've been ever since I started the YouTube channel. Andy reached out to me really early on when I was new in the space because he saw something I was doing to try and help somebody else out. And we just have a lot of common core values and things work out. When we started talking about the BRICS nation, Andy took that and set it to like 100. And you've learned a lot. Like, what's going on right now with the BRICS, Andy?
Well, they have a meeting. Well, I guess the most immediate news is that Venezuela has formally applied to the BRICS, and Bolivia, I believe, is in the midst of doing the exact same thing. And those are just little pieces of the Jenga tower that I talk about a lot. But to me, look, the biggest deal is everyone's talking about this meeting on August 22nd, and it's a big deal. James Rickards came out and said that he thought they would come out and issue a gold-backed settlement currency at the meeting, and there's been a lot of pushback against that. And to me, whether or not that happens is irrelevant. I believe due to the way that gold is viewed by the Bank of International Settlements as a riskless asset, revalued that way, the massive acquisition by the central banks more than at any time in history over the last 6 months, or actually the last year and a half, it's inevitable that gold will have a piece of the BRICS currency. But I have talked a lot about two other groups, and I've never said that they would combine. But when you look at the crossover that these countries have amongst these organizations, it was very obvious. And those are the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the Eurasian Economic Union. The four groups that I would always talk about would be the Belt Road Initiative, which is 150 plus countries, 75% of human population, roughly 50% of global GDP. The BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, now the 41 countries that want to join on with them. Also, the Eurasian Economic Union and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, let's just focus on those two for a minute. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization is the largest regional military and financial group in the world. It comprises roughly 60% of the Eurasian landmass, 40% of human population. The Eurasian Economic Union is a group that was put together by Russia and all the countries that end in Stan. And look, all of these countries, Russia's in all of them. Saudi Arabia joined the Belt Road, the BRICS, applied to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the New Development Bank. All of these countries have some form of symbiotic tie to the other organizations. And it's interesting. James Rickards, at the other day when we were together having a drink talking about this, said to me that they are going to join the BRICS at the August 22nd meeting. And I said, it's interesting you say that, James, because when you Google how many countries want to join BRICS or have applied to BRICS, you keep seeing articles that say 41. And the articles list 25 countries, but they keep saying 41. If you strip out the countries that have already applied or have expressed interest to BRICS from the Eurasian Economic Union and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, you get damn near 41 when you apply it back to the BRICS. But I'll say it this way. The Belt Road, the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the Eurasian Economic Union would represent pretty darn close to almost 90% of human population. And this, to me, is the biggest piece that you take away, is that they are becoming coalesced. And little by little by little by little, it's called, the theory is called logarithmic decay. Little by little by little by little, then all at once. It's how Hemingway went broke. It's what it would be like when you go over Niagara Falls. You start to go little by little by little, then bang. Where are we in the cycle? I don't know. But when you see this coalition of countries joining together, I think it's inevitable that we will get to that all at once moment where things really start to become difficult for the dollar.
So I'm about to tell you a story that I've never talked about on my channel. and I don't know why I haven't, but you just reminded me of this story. Real quick, everybody, I'm going to put some links down below, discount links to Las Vegas, the Silver Symposium, September 30th. Andy and I will be there along with a bunch of other speakers. It's going to be epic. And after I tell the story, Andy, I want to get your thoughts on the announcement of the gold-backed currency, because I do believe it eventually will happen. There's easy ways to tell that it'll happen, but I want to, because this video will come out before that meeting in Johannesburg. The story is this: I knew somebody that was invited to the Pentagon to do war games. They were both religious and monetary in nature. The one that he was a part of was a economic collapse, and what did the church see as a problems that they could not overcome? He was also told of a plan, and I was told this in 2010, of a bunch of countries that were formulating a attack on the US dollar. And that's what the Pentagon wanted to try and thwart. Now, we all think about the Pentagon trying to thwart a plan for that to save us. But right now, if we lose the control of the money printing scheme, we will be in a lot of trouble. I knew about this plan since 2010, and I was talking about BRICS and all this stuff to my friends and family. I didn't have a YouTube channel in 2017 when it was finally formed. But what you said is perfect, because what was the part of this plan was multiple uprisings at different times in different places around the world that could come together for a common goal. And if you want to start something that no one's going to pay attention to, you only have 4 or 5 countries come together over here, then maybe 4 or 5 countries over there, just exactly like what you're explaining, and then 4 or 5 countries over there. But then one day, it's like, you know what, let's all just join. And what used to get put off, because like you just said, Bolivia and Venezuela, do you think most people care about that? No, right? Yeah. So what? They're third world countries. Yeah. The problem is you got to, they may be third world countries, and the way they're runs them into the ground. But you got to look at their natural resources. And when they combine with other third world countries, they get very, very powerful. We forgot about how serious of a threat China was for literally a century, because they did used to run the world, and they have a lot of natural resources. They got a lot of people, and we just sort of sat back and enjoyed, being fat on the hog. And now all of a sudden, oh, they ran all the way up to number 2. How long until number 1? And we're cheering that they're moving into recession right now. Why? Let me ask you that. Why would we be cheering that China is in a recession, or they're trying to hide the fact that they're in recession, when we're at the same time changing the definition of recession?
Yeah, well, we just want to denigrate their strength, make them seem that they're not a threat. But what people really aren't seeing is that, look at the Belt Road Initiative as an example. They're going through all of the world, and they are building mutually beneficial relationships. They're building bridges and roads and maritime channels. They're building oil refineries. They're building gold and silver mines. They're helping these countries extract their natural resources, which helps China, of course, but also industrializes these countries and gives them the opportunity to have a better life, to have more of the things that the people in this country certainly take for granted. And I will say one other thing too, as far as what China is doing that really gets no attention here. They're the adult in the room. They've brokered peace contracts between Iran and Saudi Arabia, where they're building embassies in each other's countries after hating each other for centuries. The first ever railway was brokered by China between Iran and Iraq. And how about this one? How about when you look at the new BRICS naval alliance, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar, India? You have countries that have never liked each other. And pardon me?
It could rival NATO.
Yeah, but that's eventually the point. Yep. And that's the point. The media and the West, you focus on the wrong thing. They give us the information that has us all focused on the wrong thing. And I think that's just part and parcel, plays right into their hands. And we will not see any of this coming. Well, some of us will, but most people won't, because, China's going through horrible times and recession. Look, they have more in reserves than we ever will. And they are not indebted the way that we are. Yes, they may be overextended, but look at the amount of assets they have. And I don't think that China has anything to worry about from a recessionary slowdown. Not to mention, they are at the center of this massive new system that is being brought about that the West has really little, if anything, to do with. So much so, like you said, where Macron has asked to go to this meeting in Johannesburg and was turned down. This is going to be very soon. Every man for themselves, and I think more and more people are going to want to be on the side of that winning team rather than on the Western indebted fiat system, which seems to be coming to a crossroads.
I got two questions I can guarantee you've never been asked, and they're very important. I'm so glad you brought up Macron, because I think there would be massive fallout if France was allowed to come. But let's say, I think the groundwork's already being set. Macron going to China while his country was literally on fire, and talking against the U.S. and their policy, and literally laying the groundwork for them approaching BRICS and applying for BRICS. What do you think will be the fallout if France officially is allowed to apply for BRICS? Because I think that China, Russia, and India know that it's too soon to break up the Eurozone. What do you think would be the fallout?
I mean, I'm surprised there hasn't been more fallout or more publicity about the fact that when he went there and met with Xi Jinping, he signed a 51-point agreement ranging from 5G to military engagement. France took part in one of the largest liquid natural gas deals ever. I think they bought it from Qatar or Oman. I'm not positive, but they paid in yuan. So, it's happening already. And
yeah,
and look, they were right there with us in 2022 when we sanctioned Russia, but he said to Xi Jinping, look, we can't have any effect in what's going on in the Ukraine. What makes us think we'll have any effect in getting in between what your aspirations are with Taiwan? We won't. And so you are seeing countries break ranks. It's, the old Irish goodbye, you turn around and they're gone. Well, look at Mexico applying to BRICS, and a lot of our allies, Turkey and the United Arab Emirates and countries that are Western friendly are now choosing sides. And so I think if France and other European countries were to, and I think there will be Eastern European countries that do. There are a lot of these Eastern European countries that trade in the euro, but do not have the euro as their currency. They have their own independent currencies. And I think if push comes to shove, they will make this move. There's safety in numbers. And Macron is the only one who's had the courage to step out and even make an overture in the G7 alliance. I think if it happened, look, you got Jim Willey saying Japan's going to do it, and maybe Australia. So if one happens, and now you see 2 and 3 and 4, I mean, this is that point where little by little, then all at once, people have to make their decision or take sides. If France were to formally have been admitted to the meeting in Johannesburg and express interest in applying, it would send major shockwaves through the system. But here again, I don't think it would surprise you or I or the people that have been watching you for a long time. It would surprise everyone else, and the media would frame it that way: betrayal, and how is this happening? But I think it's actually common sense.
Yeah, so I'm on record as saying that France will be applying and they will get accepted. But check this out. Belgium freaked out when Macron went over to China, freaked out. And it was sending little shockwaves. The news was totally muted. I'm like, okay, there's something going on here. France has historically been the trendsetter. A lot of people joke around about the French, dropping their weapons and running the other direction. France is the reason why Nixon took us off the gold standard to close the convertibility back in 71 in the first place, because they were screaming and yelling. Now, it's funny that we have Germany sending a delegation over here, in 2015, 2016, after the Fed said, sure, you really want your gold back? It could take up to 7 years. And then they come back railing against the Federal Reserve and saying they don't have our money. And now Germany's coming out and saying, hey, we've got a gold reevaluation account. I'm trying to explain to people exactly what that means. So I'm glad you answered it that way, because you nailed it, in my opinion. Now, the number 2 question I've got for you, because you already brought up Mexico. What is the severe consequences? Talk worst case scenario. If Mexico joins BRICS, and I've explained this to people how serious this is, what will be the number 1 focus of Russia and China to get Mexico to do if they're now aligned with them?
Well, I mean, obviously they would want their resources, which would be the silver, but also, I mean, if BRICS rolls out as a military alliance, having, you look at the way I think people could understand a little bit more how Putin would feel when NATO was encroaching on their borders, when they promised, when they signed the charter, that they wouldn't, and here they are in the Ukraine and in Finland and in Poland. They have them surrounded by NATO countries and weapons. Can you only imagine the outrage that the American public would feel if you had Chinese and Russian military in under the common flag of BRICS on the outside of the Texas border? So my guess is that that's where you're going. Maybe I'm wrong, but
It's 100%.
certainly they want to get all of their natural resources, and then secondly, get into a military arrangement with them and BRICS forces around the world, just like NATO.
Yeah. So what I believe is we're seeing a lot of countries trading the yuan and some other their own local currencies under this new BRICS alliance. I believe that once Mexico is fortified and part of BRICS, there's going to be so many benefits. China is going to start building infrastructure. There's already a couple cities in Mexico that look like you're in downtown Austin already. They're going to start giving them so many reasons to do whatever they want. And then it's like a good drug dealer. First one's free, second one's going to cost you. I believe what's going to happen with, let's say, their food resources and things like that. They're going to say, hey, why don't you start selling them to your food to us? Let's ship over things to us, and we're going to pay you a premium for it. Very similar to like similar, but in the reverse of what Putin did with the ruble and the oil trade, right? Hey, you want to buy our oil? We'll give it to you at a discount, but you got to use rubles. China's going to sit there and say, hey, we're already using yuan. How about this? Why don't we give you a little bit of a premium for your food and
China's
divert
doing that
that
with
from the
Brazil right
US?
now. As the second largest exporter of corn in the world, they're now selling their corn to China for yuan, and that's exactly what they'll do. It's
Yeah.
exactly what their whole model is:
Yeah.
joint mutual benefit. And I mean, you can find negativity in anything in terms of what it would mean to Mexico having all of their resources stripped, or does it make them more of an industrialized country? I don't know. I mean, I haven't really thought about that,
I
but
believe the latter. The
yeah.
reason why it's real simple. If they're getting more money than the US is giving them for their food imports and let's say their oil, they're getting more money. They have more money to spend in infrastructure. And actually, it would behoove China to force that as well, to sit there and say, hey, we're going to give you more. But just like the US does with other countries, hey, we're going to give you some money. We're also going to dictate how you spend it. And if China is able to go, we're going to give you more for your oil, more for your food, knowing that now that's less food and oil going to the US, which is going to cause a hyperinflationary pressure on the US, killing their enemy's economy, then they're going to go, we want you to take a certain percentage of that. We want to see highways. We want to see byways. We want to see infrastructure. Why? Because now this is hitting the news, and all of a sudden you see all these other countries going, wow, look at what China did for them. And that's what I think is the greatest threat to our economy.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, and it's very obvious that that is the rallying cry. The rallying cry is safety in numbers, industrialization, a better life for your people, a better life for you all, freedom from the Western hegemony. That is the rallying cry. The glue that makes it work will be commodities backed or pegged to a system. And I suppose it would probably be a blockchain based system. I mean, the digital yuan has been going on for almost 5 years now, and with great success. That could be the rails of the new BRICS currency, with commodities or gold pegged to it, something along those lines, giving the currency immutability and veracity and transparency. As Zoltan Pozsar says, Bretton Woods 3, Bretton Woods 1, well, at the end of World War II, Bretton Woods 2, loosely when we left the gold standard, as you paid reference to, because of de Gaulle, and now the petrodollar backing the dollar. Bretton Woods 3 here, this new system based upon commodities and transparency, and yeah, and mutual benefit, I guess you could throw into it. It makes a lot of sense to me, and I have been saying that for a very long time, that I think indeed that is what will happen. And look, China's smart in doing it this way. It's a lot better to attract bees with honey than it is with vinegar. And I think that is what they are doing. They're going around the world and saying, let's partner, let's make this better. And there is safety in numbers. So I do expect that to happen. I don't know how it all unfolds, but I do think you'll see a lot more of the countries that we once called allies making that shift as well. And if Japan makes that move, oh my goodness, you can only imagine the ramifications that will have for the whole system. And at that point, it signals to the rest of the G7, well, time for every man and woman to find their own safe passage.
Yeah, let me close it out with this last question for you, because Japan went on record last November as their yen was just collapsing. He said, any much more of this, and I'm paraphrasing, we may have to sell some US dollars to beef up and support our own currency. What do you think about that? And what do you think if or when that happens, what kind of move on gold would that cause?
Well, they're already selling treasuries. We've seen that both Japan and China. They're not buying anymore. They are selling it. And look, if they sell dollars to beef up their currency, it wouldn't surprise me one bit at all, although I don't know how successful they will be in normalizing their balance sheet. They tried it just a couple of weeks ago, and 48 hours after had to backtrack and go back to easing, or they blow up the entire system. You look at a country like Japan, you look at a country like the US, and I don't know that there is an easy way back to normalize anything when you've gone so far down the rabbit hole with monetization of assets. The Bank of Japan, I think, owns 40% of all the bonds and stocks in the country. So I don't really know how that would play out, but simply to say that I think there will be a lot of countries that will sell dollars simply because, well, I mean, a lot of reasons, but the biggest in my mind will be a movement out of OPEC taking other currencies for oil. Look at it this way. Why would they want to sell us their oil? We're going green. We've told them that. We've signed executive orders. We have nearly $200 trillion in debt. How are we going to pay for it? We only have $5 trillion in assets, according to the 2022 balance sheet, of which 40% is student debt. How do we pay for it? We'll inflate. So we're a country that's going green, that has chosen inflation over austerity forever. Why would they want to do this? And I keep coming back to this one interesting fact, and maybe I'm just making something out of it or looking too much into it, but there's a man named Jared Bernstein, and Jared Bernstein is the lead economic advisor for the United States, who in 2014 wrote a report picked up by the New York Times, an op-ed report said Dethrone King Dollar, where he says the exorbitant privilege of being the world reserve currency is something the US can no longer afford, that we must take immediate steps to shed our reserve standard because of the distortions in the trade imbalances it creates. And this is the number one economic advisor to the United States government. Is it a coincidence? Not sure. But I'll tell you this, if you wanted to lose the world reserve status, first thing you would do would be to weaponize the dollar. Not just weaponize it, confiscate it and use that money to do something else with it. In the case of Russia, we took their money from the Forex and we put it into rebuilding the Ukraine. Not cool. Number two.
Insane.
And then number two, antagonize Saudi Arabia. We're going green. Thanks for everything, but we're going green. We really don't need you anymore. And signing an executive order to put it in stone, they're the linchpin of the dollar hegemony. Those two things alone, you have to ask yourself, did they really think there wouldn't be unintended consequences, or are they just following Jared Bernstein's playbook? Don't know, just throwing it out there. I'd love to hear your take on that.
Well, I'll tell you this, if they are playing off of his playbook, this is such a big deal. It's a multi-year plan, and it's the frog in boiling water. It has to be slow, especially so that nobody can be blamed. It's akin to when the Federal Reserve raises rates, because like you've been begging for rates to go up because inflation's rising. The same thing happened in 04, 05. So we start raising rates, and then they wait to get you to beg them about course, because they don't want to be blamed for everything. And I believe that's exactly
to your point.
Yeah.
When I started thinking about this was when Biden said it's Putin's inflation. No, inflation is always a monetary event. It's an increase in the money supply. That's Austrian economics 101.
Yep.
So when they said it's Putin's inflation, I'm like, my God, they're looking to find a villain. So by incentivizing all of these countries to move away from the dollar and Saudi Arabia to move away from the petrodollar, you now have villains. Xi Jinping, Putin, and OPEC. How could they do that to us? They did it to us. And this country is so naive that most people will believe it. And if they dump dollars, all of them, in unison, as Mike Adams calls Operation Sandman, and those dollars hit our shore and interest rates spike, everything blows up. You get a great reset. And the other end of the spectrum, as we talked about in a previous video, is Lael Brainerd, the modern monetary theorist, the number two economic advisor to the Biden administration. Have no fear. We know you've lost everything, but Lael Brainerd is here with the new CBDC. Sign on the dotted line. Those bastards did it to us. You now have a villain, and the villain, it would be the loss of the petro standard by those countries led by Xi Jinping, Putin, and OPEC. To me, that's in the back of my mind where I see all of this going. Either that or the people running our country they're just beyond stupid. I mean,
I'd
there's
say
stupid
actually
and there's
evil. No,
nefarious.
I think they're nefarious. And when they literally lean over to a congresswoman that's been a congresswoman for a long time that I can't stand, I'm blanking on her name, and they say you're going to vote nay or yay, and it's just like they're being told the puppet master was literally recorded. You're going to vote this way. There are people behind the scenes that are incredibly evil. Now check this out. This is what came to mind right when you started talking about the bad guy, right? Being Russia, or they're the bad guys. Now it's getting so bad as everything's coming apart. We now have bad guys in our own country. They're railing. The White House is railing against Fitch, just so angry that they would downgrade their debt. I mean, when was the last time we saw U.S. debt go from AAA to AA plus?
Yeah, and that's true. And there was I want to read to you something here
Yeah.
that to me, going back to what we were talking about in our previous discussion about things happening inside the country, not just outside, inside the country. And that's a big thing to me, that the world is seeing what we're doing inside the country with all of the things that are very much not part of what America has always stood for, in particular, justice and liberty, and is it being applied equally? But listen to this from James McCormack, Fitch's ratings managing director and global head of sovereign and supranational, not supernational, but not super, whatever.
Yeah, I know
Whatever.
what you mean.
Super
Supernatural.
national ratings. Yeah, not like spooky things that are hiding behind the corner. Super national ratings. So he's the head of their ratings department. And he said this year, it's not just the debt limit that we've seen in the United States, it's a steady deterioration in their governance. So it's the way that we are running our affairs as well. And I think that, to me, is key. It's not just how the debt is accelerating. It's the way that we are governing and accumulating more debt, to where we added $1.8 trillion of debt in the last 6 months. It took us 209 years to add the first 108 trillion or 1.8 trillion. So the acceleration, the poor decision making, the mismanagement, it all goes together with the breakdown in unity in this country. Black versus white, red versus blue, vax versus no vax, rich versus poor. I mean, you're defined by the person you voted for. Never was that way. And so it's all part of a bigger problem. And to ignore one side without looking at the other, you're only seeing half the picture. If you really wanted to create a reset, like Klaus Schwab said, weaponize the dollar, push away Saudi Arabia, mismanage the world reserve currency, print the hell out of it, and create all sorts of divisiveness at home, where the rest of the world says that's not America anymore. Bye. And so I hate to feel this way, but the title of my presentation at the Rural Symposium was this all intended? I don't know, but look at the two advisors. One wants to get rid of the banks, and the other wants to get rid of the world reserve currency. So is it by coincidence? Maybe. Are they stupid? Maybe. Nefarious? For sure. Don't know. But I think it's going to be a incredibly interesting next 15, 16 months as we head into the election. And there's going to be a lot of things to talk about that are going to center around this topic of de-dollarization and this growing chorus of countries pushing back against it.
Well, I got to be honest with you. I cannot wait to see where we're at, because I think things are going to be hitting a fever pitch literally when you and I are sharing a stage on the 30th of September.
Yeah, and you know something, I'm a big fan of yours too, man. You're my friend, but you're really you're doing a major service to the people out there, opening their eyes to this. And you know, I've told you, I was on the BRICS things a long time ago, and I learned a lot of it from you. You are you're doing God's work. Let's just say that. And I think that I hope more people will come and be there with us. And certainly I do all I can to get this interview out to my database and get more people listening to what you have to say. I follow everything that you put out, and you couldn't be more spot on. And it's so important that people open their eyes to what's coming, because if you don't pay attention to people like you, the alternative media, which really is the news, you're not getting out of the way of what is a once in a generation shift, and is going to send reverberations through this country on every level: spiritual, moral, economically, you name it. And we're all, as my mentor Richard Russell said, And I believe this. And what is coming, he or she who loses least wins. And we're all going to lose in some way if these things happen, but at least to have your eyes open and know that it's coming, it's a big deal. So thanks for having me on, and thanks for doing what you're doing. And I'll just tell you, I think that you're doing a heck of a job, and keep it up.
Thank you so much. Hey, everybody, I'll share a quick funny story about Andy, but I'm going to put discount links to the Silver Symposium down below. I was with him in Boca Raton while he was speaking last year. Incredible speech. And he did bring that up. He goes, I learned a lot of this from Travis. And he points in the back, and there was a Travis sitting in front of me. And my wife leans and goes, is he talking about him?
Yeah, I saw that, Travis, at this Rule Symposium. I would have loved to have seen you, but I guess it'll have to wait for another month or so. But I'm very much looking forward to seeing you and everyone else out there. And it's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to being able to talk to people in real time and face to face again.
Right on. Well, guys, get your tickets. The seating is limited. We're going to crush it ninja style in Las Vegas, September 30th. Thank you, Andy, so much. And we will talk to you guys later.
Stay well.